I now call on the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, Deputy Brendan Howlin, to make a statement on the estimates. Without interruption. Thank you.
This budget and estimates sets out to deliver on this government's promise to the Irish people made at the last general election, to fulfil our commitments under the Troika programme foisted on the Irish people by the previous government, and to restore Ireland's economic sovereignty. In pursuit of this goal, the two government parties agreed a strategy for the budget and estimates. It involves reducing the tax and spending consolidation from the €3.1 billion that was published to €2.5 billion, targeting a general government deficit of 4.8% for 2014, and in the process to achieve a primary balance. This strategy seeks to reassure international investors that we are committed to reducing our deficit to below 3% of GDP by 2015 as we work to exit the Troika programme. It seeks to put us on a path to long-term debt sustainability and to ease the burden on future generations. It seeks to encourage growth in the domestic economy by targeting a consolidation no greater than is necessary to achieve our fiscal goals, and by investing for future economic growth. And equally importantly, Ceann Comhairle, it seeks to minimise the impact of austerity on the Irish people. This is the last of our budgets under the fiscal constraints of the Troika programme. We've made good on our commitments to the international community that has supported us in recent years. We do not underestimate that effort. It is a testament to the courage and fortitude of the Irish people. No austerity is the catch cry of those who have argued that there were alternative strategies available to this government. Nobody is ideologically committed to austerity. Austerity is what is left when Fianna Fáil in government drove our economy into the ground and led us beholden, like the famine victims of old, to seek relief from outside the country. Some have argued that rather than seeking consolidation of our position with international support, that we should instead have harnessed whatever remained of our resources and with one final throw of the dice, spend it in an effort to reflate our economy, regardless of the international economic environment. But we tried that strategy before, in 1977, and it led to more than a decade of hardship. As I've stated consistently, government policy is not focused solely on getting the deficit down, important and all as that is. We've supported enterprise, we've supported job creation through direct investment and through structural reforms, measures that are now demonstrably beginning to bear fruit. We've also sought and secured better terms from our international borrowers. Our task now, as Michael Noonan has said, is to plan for the future. We must ensure that the sacrifices of the last few years have not been made in vain, and that we use the progress made as a platform for future sustainable growth and development. The expenditure measures, Ceann Comhairle, that I'm announcing for 2014 amount to €1.6 billion from an overall consolidation package of some €2.5 billion. We've gone a long way in meeting our fiscal targets. At the end of 2010, the deficit was over 30%, a truly staggering sum. Our target deficit for 2014 is 4.8%. Since we took office in 2011, this government has managed to reduce spending in a balanced, strategic and responsible way. This is in stark contrast to the previous government, who oversaw a litany of disastrous decisions that failed the Irish people. The progress that we have made in bringing stability to the economy and in meeting our fiscal targets must be viewed in the context of the increased demand on public services. Not only have we reduced spending in absolute terms, we are delivering more services with that reduced money. We have a growing population, which increased by almost 350,000 between 2006 and the last census in 2011. The numbers in receipt of job seekers' payments have increased by almost 200,000, or 130%, in 2008 and 2012. Numbers in education have increased by 78,000, or 8%, from 961,000 in 2008 to 1,039,000 last year. Medical card holders have increased by 540,000 to over 40% of the population now, an increase between 2008 and 2012 from 1.35 million to the highest level of medical card ownership in our history, currently at 1.89 million. The number of people of pensionable age has increased by 65,500, or 13.5% since 2008. There are few areas where the reform agenda has been more manifest than it has been in the budgetary process itself. We've moved, in line with the new European arrangements, to this October budget, which should ensure we can achieve one key goal of the Oireachtas committee system, the examination of public spending before the money is actually spent. This should bring about a qualitative difference to our debates about spending over the next few years. Our first task upon taking office as a new government was to undertake a comprehensive review of expenditure. This was not a once-off effort. The review of what we do, how we do it, and whether we're using the resources of the people appropriately and achieving the policy goals that we set has now become the new normal. To this end, a further comprehensive review of expenditure and a review of the capital investment framework will commence in the coming months. I want, Ceann Comhairle, to acknowledge the contribution that public servants in this state have made to our economic recovery. Over the course of the last 5 years, the public service has reduced in size by almost 10%. The cost of the pay bill has fallen even further, by some 17%. And the Haddington Road Agreement that I reached with the public service unions earlier this year will permit that cost to fall further still. These savings need to be protected and need to be sustained, which means that we need to continue to demand further efficiency across all areas of the public service. And we must ensure that public service managers across every sector make full use of the extra 15 million hours that were achieved and hard-won in workplace flexibilities agreed in Haddington Road. However, as we reform and as we improve, there are immediate pressures that need to be addressed. In recent times, I've come to the view that there are some areas of the public service where we simply need to provide more staff after 5 years of downsizing. For this reason, the target for public service numbers next year has been adjusted to allow some additional scope for extra staff in our classrooms, in our hospital wards, and in frontline policing. These important additional resources are a reform dividend, only made possible because of the savings being delivered across the system as a whole. And this can be done. Fresh intake of people, while at the same time we intend to reduce the pay bill next year by 500 million euros. I intend publishing a revised public service reform plan by year's end, building on what we've achieved to date and setting out a new, ambitious programme of reform. That plan will focus on innovation in terms of service delivery and increased focus on outcomes. As one example of this, Today, the government is announcing a pilot phase for a new model of financing social interventions in Ireland called social impact investment. This uses private capital to provide better outcomes for our citizens. To determine the potential for social impact investing in Ireland, the pilot phase is seeking private sector investment partners to provide long-term, stable homes for homeless families in the Dublin region. The project will provide families, and in particular children, with better lives through increased levels of school participation, reduced levels of antisocial behaviour, and reduced levels of adult homelessness. This measure is radical, it's reforming, and demonstrates my commitment to explore any model of intervention that can better use resources to protect the most vulnerable in our society. The Minister for Finance has set out a series of measures to promote employment. That's a priority of my department and of every department of this government. Our current 5-year capital framework sets out a €17.1 billion investment programme between now and 2017 to maintain and improve this country's infrastructure. In recognition of the importance of stimulating economic activity, we've sought to augment that programme whenever possible, consistent with our Troika commitments. In July of last year, I announced €2.25 billion in infrastructure stimulus packages. These projects are progressing, Ceann Comhairle, as planned. 5 of the 9 PPP projects have already issued to the market, and the flagship one that I announced last year, the Grange-Gorman DIT project, valued at over €200 million, is due to issue by the end of this month. 13,000 direct and many more indirect jobs are expected to be created by this programme. Earlier this year, I announced €150 million of direct exchequer capital and a further €250 million of further PPPs. The extra exchequer money is being invested in 28 badly needed school projects, in maintaining our local road network, and in a local authority housing insulation programme. All 25,000 local authority houses not insulated will be insulated by this programme. We're now including social procurement contracts in our schools' capital works for the first time, ensuring that a proportion of the workforce is drawn from the long-term unemployed. Investment in our recovery is, of course, not confined to central government. Commercial semi-state investment over the next 3 years is set to reach €5 billion. And through NAMA, as the Minister for Finance has already mentioned, we'll be investing a further €2 billion in Irish commercial property over the next 2 years. We're transforming the National Pensions Reserve Fund into the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund to invest on a commercial basis in projects in Ireland rather than in projects across the globe. Projects in Ireland that support economic activity and employment here. And a value for the National Pension Reserve Fund discretionary portfolio at end June this year was €6.4 billion. Members of the House, Ceann Comhairle, will also be aware that the government recently successfully concluded the award of the National Lottery licence for a figure in excess of €400 million. I've already pledged to this House that €200 million of this dividend will be and is ring-fenced to ensure the construction of the National Children's Hospital under the direction of my colleague, the Minister for Health. I'm pleased to be able to announce that the further €200 million in capital spending arising from the balance of the lottery proceeds will be used to support local economic activity and job creation. These projects will, of course, be subject to public spending codes. The €200 million is to be invested from the lottery licence in 2014 and will help to fund road maintenance and repair works, a new round of sports capital grants, the building of a new national indoor training arena at the National Sports Campus, a new better energy programme to insulate homes, housing adaptation grants for older people and people with disabilities, the National City of Culture Initiative, the development of a large-scale multifunctional event centre in the city of Cork, the Wild Atlantic Way driving route tourism project along the west coast, and a number of 1916 commemorative projects. The funding allocations for these and other projects will be included in the revised estimates volumes for 2014, which will be published before the end of the year. I will refer to further allocations from this programme later in my speech. Arising from our state asset sales programme, now well advanced, and the classification of the state's investment in Irish water, I hope to be in a position to announce a further round of capital investments next year. The last 6 years has left both emotional and physical scars on this country. Nowhere is this problem more acute than in the area of housing. We've allocated €10 million to resolve the problems at Priory Hall, a particular blot on the national psyche and an example of all that was particularly wrong under the last government. €10 million will also be provided for an unfinished housing estate resolution initiative. Details of this scheme will be announced by my colleague, the Minister for Housing, later today. I'm allocating €30 million of the lottery licence proceeds to recommence for the first time in many years the state's housing building programme. This will facilitate up to 500 additional housing units between a small number of new builds and the return of previously uninhabitable units to the housing stock. These two measures I regard as extremely important, and I hope to return to further enhancing those measures as resources allow. As I stated earlier, Ceann Comhairle, job creation continues to be the #1 priority for this government. While the numbers in employment have risen by 33,800 this year, and the unemployment rate is down from 15.1% in 2012 to 13.3% in September, we all recognise the seriousness of the challenge that remains. We will continue to invest in the people who, through no fault of their own, find themselves out of work. Pathways to Work 2 sets out our strategy for tackling unemployment, and in particular, long-term unemployment. The total 2014 allocation for activation places in education and training and in work experience is €1.6 billion. This will provide nearly 300,000 places in work, in education and in training programmes across the Departments of Social Protection and the Department of Education and Skills, an increase of 18,000 or 7% since 2012. Importantly, of those places, 94,000 of them will be reserved for the long-term unemployed, an increase of 78% on the 2012 provision. I'm providing an additional €9 million in capital spending to complete the rollout of the one-stop shop intro offices to provide better services for those unemployed seeking work. I'm allocating a further €14 million to the Youth Guarantee Fund, which will support additional activation places for people under 25. And it's in this context that we are extending the €100 reduced rate of job seekers allowance and supplementary welfare allowance to existing recipients who reach 22 and to new entrants aged up to 24 on or after the 1st of January next. The reduced rate of €144 will apply to those reaching 25 from January. It should be noted, Ceann Comhairle, that the rate of those availing of the Back to Education scheme is €160 per week. It is in education and training that our young people should be. We will also continue to support for employers across all sectors in creating jobs and in sustaining jobs. Our enterprise policies are continuing to secure new investments, employment and export growth. Taking account of requirements in these sectors, I am allocating total capital expenditure of just under €450 million to the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation to drive the jobs and enterprise agenda. I'm proposing to allocate €49.6 billion to voted current expenditure next year. The demands of a growing and ageing population pose a particular challenge for funding the provision of health services and for bringing about health reform. I'm allocating almost €13.3 billion for health provision next year. This includes an additional €187 million against the published profile to fund reforms and to help ease service pressures. In line with the programme for government, I am allocating €37 million to fund the rollout of a free GP care for children aged under 5 and those under. This is a first step in our programme to provide free GP care for all, as promised. I'm allocating €20 million for the development of community mental health services, as envisaged under Vision for Change. I've agreed to a much-reduced headcount savings target of 1,000 to protect frontline services in health. While health is a key priority for government, the fact is that it accounts for 27% of public expenditure and therefore cannot be immune from making a contribution to our recovery efforts. In order to fund its contribution to our fiscal targets, we have to strike a balance between funding services through significant savings on pay, savings on drugs, and measures relating to eligibility for medical cards and increased charges. New saving measures next year will include €50 million on drugs from generic substitution and reference pricing, €113 million from a review of all medical cards to remove ineligible and redundant cards, €25 million from a lowering of income thresholds for the over 70s medical cards to €900 per week for a couple and €500 for a single person, and €30 million for private bed charges in public hospitals. Further details of the health estimate will be announced by my colleague, the Minister for Health, later. I'm pleased to announce that the burden of the adjustment on social protection expenditure will be reduced by €150 million in 2014 to a reduction of €290 million. This is the third year in succession that this government has delivered a lower consolidation that was set out by its predecessor, and reaffirms our commitment to both the areas of health and social protection. Social protection expenditure remains, of course, the single largest area of public spending, accounting for almost 40% of gross current expenditure. This area of expenditure cannot be excluded from savings. The household benefits package remains a significant area of spending, accounting for over €218 million this year. In order to reduce costs, we have decided to discontinue the remaining telephone allowance for all recipients from the 1st of January, a measure that will save €44 million. We will standardise the rate of maternity benefit at €230 per week for new claimants from January.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a second. Would you please allow the Minister to present his estimates? Thank you.
The number of waiting days for entitlement to illness benefit has been increased from 3 to 6 days. This will save €22 million. However, I'm pleased that, again, I can confirm that there will be no reduction to basic social welfare rates for people of working age or for pensioners. I'm pleased to confirm that child benefit rates are being maintained at €130 per month. And finally, there will be no reduction to the rate or the duration of the weekly fuel payments. Further details of the social welfare package are set out in the expenditure report and will be outlined in full by my colleague, the Minister for Social Protection, later. As I've already outlined, education has been a considerable beneficiary of our capital investment programme since we took office. We're building more schools to meet the needs of our growing school-age population. I'm allocating just over 8.7 billion euros to the education sector. As a result, I'm pleased to be able to report that we are not increasing either primary or post-primary class sizes. I'm also making provision for the recruitment of over 1,250 new classroom and resource teachers for the school system next year. And a further 5 million will be allocated to extend the reach of the school's books to rent programme in primary schools. We will be providing additional funding to the Department of Justice and Equality to increase staff for the Garda vetting service. Also in the justice sector, it's expected that the new Court of Appeal and the Legal Services Regulatory Authority will be established next year. And as has been previously announced, we will begin a new Garda recruitment programme next year alongside the independent review of the force undertaken and agreed under Haddington Road. Ciancorla, making my estimate speech last year, I said I was confident that as a people we'd come through this mess. A mess created by those opposite who now jeer, and which was endured by the people of Ireland, and which endangered the very viability of our state. Today, I'm more than confident. I'm certain. Yes, there will be difficult days ahead. Yes, there are still difficult decisions, Willie, to be made. But we are now picking up speed, and our goal is in sight. And I commend these estimates to the House.